Right, so those are the rules in a nutshell. Now we can look at different ways to use them and how to, fix sentences and stuff. We'll look at some examples of sentences that we can fix, and maybe even whole paragraphs or whatever. The old man was sitting on the rocking chair, and he smoked a cigar. It's easy to write sentences like this. Like to my son, he's 12 now, and he writes these sentences like this all the time, where he uses a lot of and. Because I guess his teacher's telling him, you don't want to have too many short sentences together. Then it starts sounding like some children's book. See Dick run. See Jane chase after him. And you don't want to write a bunch of short, choppy simple sentences like that. So the easiest way to coordinate and to avoid that is to just start connecting them with the word and, or with the word so, or with the word but, And so that's what my son does a lot of, and so I've been teaching him not to do that. And so how do you get around not doing that then? How can we start writing complex sentences? Well, really the best way is getting used to using subordinate clauses and subordinate phrases even better. Nonetheless, let's look at this really quick. The man sitting on the rocking chair smoked a cigar. So how do we see to do that? Well, what you can do is when you look at a sentence, look for weak verbs like was, is if you're writing present tense, but you typically be writing past tense when you're writing stories and novels. The old man was sitting on the rocking chair. Let's take that first clause. That first, in this case, it's actually a whole sentence. If we remove was, can we still connect the information? The old man sitting on the rocking chair, or the old man that sat on the rocking chair. So yeah, these both work. And when you do that, like when you say something like the old man sitting on the rocking chair, now the idea is incomplete. So we took this complete sentence simply by removing the weak verb, was or is or are or had or whatever it happens to be. Sometimes you can't do this, but sometimes you can. I'm just showing an example where you can simply just remove that verb and then let sitting be the verb. The old man sitting on the rocking chair did what though? Because he's not, you didn't say the old man sat on the rocking chair. That would be a complete sentence. But because it's an ing, it's not a complete sentence. The old man sitting on the rocking chair, what was he doing? We need to finish the sentence, so you put a comma, smoked a cigar. The old man sitting on the rocking chair smoked a cigar. And actually, I don't think these commas are needed here, since you can say that you don't know who the old man is without this piece of information. Then it can just be any old man. The old man that sat on the rocking chair smoked a cigar. That's another way you can do it if you don't like the ing and you think that sounds better. Here's another example. The mansion was at the end of Crow Street, and it was old and falling apart. This is an example of a sentence that's even easier to write. That is, these kinds of compounds they just come second nature to us, and it seems like we write a lot of them if you're not paying attention to what you're writing. And that's fine. I mean, you want to get used to writing your first drafts without being littered with a bunch of compound sentences like this. On the same hand, you don't want to stress yourself out when writing. You want to be able to get through the first draft. And if you sit there and keep thinking about, oh man, I just used a compound sentence. Oh, I just used 3 compound sentences in a row. Oh, I just used 3 simple sentences in a row. And you keep stressing yourself that way, you're going to get this weird anxiety feeling in your chest or in your shoulders or whatever happens. You're going to start just getting this like feeling like I don't want to write, I can't write. And it's really a bummer. And you can ruin yourself that way to where you can't even get your first draft out anymore. So don't worry about it. Just get your first draft out. Write naturally how you write. However it happens to be, just write that way. And when you go back and you're doing your corrections, using like Master Edit, for example, which you can see like I already said, you can check the link in the description on the right. then you want to pay attention to your sentences and change them and find sentences like, if you write a lot of these type of sentences, then you can start using these techniques to get rid of sentences like that. Okay, so then you can start using one of the techniques is what's information that's repeated in both sentences. In this case, the mansion and it's referring back to the mansion. So the mansion appears in both sentences. That means we can use, and since it's an object, we can use which or that, a which clause or that clause. And then we can remove it because oftentimes it's not needed. So for example, here, the mansion that was at the end of Crow Street. Now you wouldn't use which here with commas because then you are saying that it could be any mansion, and then this is just extra information. But this is needed information. We don't know what mansion it is unless it's a mansion at the end of Crow Street. It could be the other mansion, right? It could be the mansion that's not at the end of Crow Street. Okay, so the mansion that was at the end of Crow Street was old and falling apart. Now we found a way to remove the word and to make this one sentence, and it's through coordination. In this case, we use this like subordinate clause idea here, this that clause. And then we can remove that was and get a better sentence. The mansion at the end of Crow Street was old and falling apart, which is much better than the mansion was at the end of Crow Street and it was old and falling apart. Another way to look at this is like we did up here. Simply get rid of weak verbs and see if there's a way we could then read it without that. It's like, oh, wait a minute, then I don't need and in it because I can now have it the mansion at the end of Crow Street. I need was now, so I would put was back. Was old and falling apart. So different ways to think about it. One is just look for weak verbs and see if you can if the sentence makes sense without it. In this case, it does. And the other is to find similar ideas within the sentences, and then think of a way to put them together by using who, which, where, whose, was. So there's different ways to do that. We went through some of them in the very beginning, the first part. We went through an example of using whose, went through an example of using where, and or not whose, who and where. Whose is just something belongs to someone. So just take any two sentences that you have written that you've either combined or didn't combine, and think of things within both of them. Like the ones that you really want to look for is places, where places are repeated. Even if it's not repeated, it won't necessarily be repeated by name. You'll have it repeated by pronoun most likely. So it'll be called whatever it is, kitchen or the house or whatever. Then it'll say like it, or maybe you won't even have it in the next sentence, but the idea will be there. You know that that's the house. That is the action the person's doing is in the house. So you have houses in the first sentence, and then the second sentence the person's doing something in the house. So then you can say blah 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 house, comma. And where the person was, or sometimes a comma is not needed, where so and so was doing such and such. Anyway, so we already went through an example like that. But you don't want to use too many of those. You don't want too many sentences where you have like this is Lois Bujol's The Curse of Chalion. I don't know if it's pronounced Chalion or Chalion, probably Chalion. Anyway, so in her work, and I really like her writing. She's considered a literary writer. She gets a lot of praise for writing beautiful sentences. And my time's just about up. And the thing is, so what she goes through a lot of is, what she doesn't use a lot of, obviously, is like which, but she uses that kind of a lot, but that's fine. But she doesn't use which very often. And so what you want to do, though, is when you have that's and whiches, is to, it's called witch hunting. Search for your whiches and search for your that's, search for your withs in your withs as we went for before, and the Master Edit software will help you do that by highlighting them for you. And that's the time for this video, so come back to the next one. Thank you. Check out the link for the Master Edit. Give it a test drive.